Hi, welcome back to More People, More Problems with Chelsea and myself, Brittany. Today we're going to have a good one. We're going to talk about trimming the fat. What do you think,
Trimming
Chelsea?
the fat. Yeah, thanks, Britt. I think this will be a good topic for today. I think a lot of people probably confuse trimming the fat with right sizing,
Yeah.
which tends to be a little bit more about restructuring your workforce, hiring new talent, looking at your leadership teams. But trimming the fat, I think, is a much more holistic approach to gaining efficiencies. I think all organizations, whether you're private or public, have an opportunity to constantly look at their operations and see if there's more efficiencies to be gained. And it's not just about cutting people. What do you think, Britt?
Yeah, I know. Originally, it makes me think like when we first talked about, I guess, topics, it's like trimming the fat. It was kind of like a crude but accurate way of maybe talking about how do you let people go, especially in this climate, in this market. But I think what we discussed earlier and what you really brought to light is that it's not just always about like the humans exactly, it's so much more. And if you think about a meaty steak, it's like there's fat all around it. And so how do we really visualize like the different areas and opportunities to trim some things to make a more yummy, tasty, whatever you want to call it, but like realistically a hearty company because that's what it comes down to.
Exactly. And so, not just about the folks, right? Although I think on a later podcast,
Yeah.
we'll definitely dive into the whole idea of right sizing versus downsizing, and then getting into the really granular about how do you fire someone, like if we're getting down to the crux of it. But I think in terms of trimming the fat, we're looking at it from a much more holistic view, right? So we're
Yeah.
looking at having accountability policies in place. So, for example, you can look at proper timekeeping of employees. You can have like mismanagement of timekeeping. You can have poor financial record keeping. You can have many kind of scenarios like that you need to look at and lean your processes. You can have sustainability measures in place. Were you going to say something, Brent?
I was just going to jump in and say, it's so funny because I think this highlights how you and I think differently and really play on each other. Like, I think what I hear is you jumping into different opportunities to make a stronger company through like process and I'm not finding the right word, but it's like speed, impact, like go, go, go. Whereas I think even there's a preliminary to a foundational thought around a company, which is I think so many people think about a company as a family or like a group of people and how to, oh, we need to make the people all feel good and do stuff. And like, that's just bullshit. Like, fundamentally, a company is a transaction between the company itself and the human. The human provides impact to make a stronger company, and the company provides pay, so money, experience and growth. And I think when you think about that, then it kind of goes into okay, so let's take out the emotions, which a lot of that is hard because we're humans and that's at the forefront. And there's a lot of biases that come in. But then, like, how do we make it more cut and dry? And I think that's where you're jumping into, which is like, let's talk about process, which it's funny because at Shopify, that was always like a bad word. It was like, no one talk about that because it's like a lot of bad process. But process can be designed beautifully to make something currently not work now work and work 10 times better. That's like actual beautiful process. And I think that's what you're talking about. It's like, how do you think about things that's like fatty, that's slow, and how do you make it better, 10 times better? And yeah, I guess that was my thought.
Absolutely. And I think, for example, in the federal public service, we're looking at a lot of these areas to trim, not in response to anything drastic that's coming down the pipeline at this moment. Although we all look at the new budget that comes out from the government, and then we all kind of brace ourselves for what's going to happen depending on the leadership. But that being said, it can be about automation, right? So less
Yeah, that
reliance
was the
on
word I was
paper.
looking for.
Automation, artificial intelligence, harnessing
Yeah.
new technologies. And I don't mean taking the human out of the organization. That's not the case. But like, look at production companies, look at production lines. Having automation results in more accuracy. Say you're just filling
Yeah.
bottles of 7 Up all day long. As a human, you or I are filling them up, filling them up. Think about when you get a production in place where you have a machine doing that, your accuracy is at like 99%, less wastage, less spillage, for example,
Yeah.
if if I played on that, but you're curbing wastage, right? So
Yeah.
we're looking at
There's
more
things that
efficient
humans
waste.
should be doing that
Of course.
humans can only do, things that require, thought and
Strategic
creativity and
thinking.
add exactly. And there's things that should be automated, and I think there's a lot that we don't do that should be automated, and it's things that are routine, that are repetitive, that don't require thinking and adjustments on top of it. It's like, get rid of that bloat, if you will, and just
Yep.
automate it. It's
So
interesting too when you talk about budget, like that's something that I think is very different in the private versus public sector. I know that in a lot of the companies I work with and advise right now, there is a lot more discussion around budget because of the macroeconomics. But like 5, 10 years ago, it was like the CFO, certain execs, and everyone else was like, focus on the work, don't worry about the money, we'll get it done. And so like that compared to a budget in the government, which everything is run by that. Like
yeah.
it's public knowledge. And so it's such a different environment in regards to how you trim the fat, because financial is one aspect, but there's a few different ones you can dig down.
Well, we're federal public servants, right? So we're playing with taxpayers' money.
Yeah. So you
So
better be good.
you better be good and you got to do it right. And everything has to be reported and tracked as well. Everything's is accessible to the public,
Yeah.
and so it should be. We're using public funds to deliver programs and initiatives for Canadians and, depending on the department, for those visiting Canada as well, or working with Canada, collaborating with Canada. So the budget is always top of mind. I mean, I would love to say I worked in an organization where it's like, just do it. It's going to be great. You do whatever you got to do. Like, money's not an issue. Like, we'll deal with it later. We don't all live in that reality,
Well, and
obviously.
just to clarify, that wasn't the reality. It wasn't
You just
money's not an
spend.
issue. It was more so we had the right checks and balances in place to have tripwires to say, okay, you're going over. And actually, we talked a lot about foundational, like spend your money at the company like you would spend your own. And if you're overspending, like you're not good in any aspect of life, get smarter about your money.
So
But it was one off, and it was very specific goals that were around the product and our merchants versus just a final budget. The budget changed a lot. Whereas I think in the government, maybe I'm making an assumption, but I don't think it changes as much. Like it's
you
pretty
don't
set for the
change.
year. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you need to request additional funding for certain initiatives, and it needs to go through a full approvals process.
Yeah. Very
It's quite
structured, very
bureaucratic,
specific.
it could be quite lengthy, I mean,
Yeah.
very subject to, those higher level approvals. So, if we bring ourselves back to the whole idea of trimming the fat, trimming that meaty, juicy steak, you know what I mean? Like, we can even think about items like scaling your infrastructure. I know Shopify did this, throughout the pandemic, as many almost all organizations probably did, is they scaled down their offices
Yep.
and they either went full remote work, which I think is what you folks did, or they
Yep.
went hybrid. In the government, we're at a hybrid approach right now where we're doing a little bit at home, a little bit in the office. There are a lot of benefits to being in the office. I fully believe in that. But do we need as many buildings? Do we need to pay as many overhead costs? No, of course we don't. Can we work efficiently from home? Yes, of course we can. But also, there's a fact that going in and being around people as well is actually very beneficial to your company. So, what do you think of that in terms of a fat trimming procedure to
Yeah.
maximize your profitability?
So it's a really great specific example because it brings me back to that decision. And actually, at Shopify, I led the decision to go fully remote with the executive team, but led all the initiatives through talent and culture. And it was a really challenging one because really what we were doing in that moment was trying to figure out how to be the strongest company, therefore the strongest environment where our employees could thrive and have a high impact. And pre-pandemic, the way we did that was in person together, like fully in person. We would fly all over the place for meetings because we were focused on creative work. We felt it was stronger in person, learning through osmosis, so right beside each other, picking it up. And when the pandemic hit, we realized, okay, like that's just not going to be possible anymore. So, how do we set this up in a new way? And so, we knew we had to solve for the unknown. And when talking about trimming the fat, we'll just talk about this financially. when we were in person, we spent millions and millions of dollars on offices, on the right infrastructure, the setup, on flights, on
Mhm.
carbon emission, then to pay off for the flights, on all these different things. And when we switched our strategy to say people need to work from home, we said, okay, well, we got to trim those costs, trim that fat. That doesn't make sense. And so we were very methodical and strategic about cutting off those offices, around taking the money that we once paid for flights, for different in-person experiences, and saying, okay, now we need to set people up at home in the best way possible. So we immediately got everyone monitors at home and perfect, like, chairs, Herman Miller chairs,
Of
and
course.
different other things that we felt would then create the right environment for our employees to thrive, because then therefore they would have a higher impact and the company would be better off. And
Did
so we
did
trimmed
you,
some fat, relocated.
Britt, let me interrupt. Did you, install any slides at anyone's house like the old
No,
office?
no.
Because 'Cause I'm not sure you can get that vibe back at someone's home.
We only had one slide at one office, and, no, it's actually still there. It's now a co-working space, I believe, so people still use it. We had some funny stories with that slide.
It's like danger.
But remember,
If
actually,
anyone
we never
doesn't
said,
know.
I was gonna say disclaimer, we never said no names. We won't say shit. So I gotta pull back the stories about the slide.
Okay, yeah, no slides. Nobody heard anything about a slide.
Yeah. But it's interesting. Like, it makes me really think through some of the things where we decided, in our environment and culture, that certain decisions or certain time was being spent on things and it wasn't a valuable add on. So, like, talking about trimming the fat, another thing we did was we used to do this chaos bot around meetings. As we grew and scaled, it was by definition like the meetings would exponentially scale. And so what we found was, for a creative tech company focusing on building, most people were in meetings, sorry, discussing what they need to build instead of actually build. And it became this habit and this, like, ritual that just kept happening that we didn't like. And so we wanted to trim the fat there. So we built a bot that actually went into everyone's calendar in the company and deleted any reoccurring meeting with four or more people in it, because we just thought, okay, humans by nature get comfortable with things. And so if this meeting has been there every, like, Friday for five people, no one's going to raise their hand to cancel it, because, like, they're just gonna kind of status quo bias. They're more comfortable with what they know versus what they don't know. Also, bystander effect. Who's gonna be the one person to be like, I think this meeting
This
sucks? Like, that's
sucks.
a lot of
Yeah.
pressure. So the bot deleted all of these, and we said, listen, you can reschedule, but we're wiping your calendars clean. And so from here,
That's
fresh
so
start.
cool.
And, like, the crazy thing and the cool thing was, people forgot what they scheduled. So by the end of the week, meetings would be down like 50%, because people wouldn't reschedule the ones that didn't bring value. So it was like a system approach that trimmed the fat, which was meetings in this case, unvaluable meetings, and it really worked. People
That
hated it
that
though.
that's so cool, and yes, I would hate it in certain ways, but then I love it as well because I tend to be someone who actually questions a lot of meetings as well and saying, "But do we actually need to spend the next hour talking about this? And if we look at the end of this meeting, what did we any of us get out of it? Did
Yeah.
anyone come away with any, like, results or any answers? Or are we just coming away with more questions and we just spent an hour just talking at each other. And so I completely agree with that. And that's a super cool way to use automation to kind of mess with people a little bit. And it reminds me of when I used to talk to a former colleague, a former manager back years and years ago. He'd go on vacation and then he'd come back and you have hundreds of emails, right? You're catching up from vacation. He would essentially delete all his emails. Like, I don't have time for this. I'm like, okay, but like, what if
Bold.
anything was
That's a
important?
bold move.
Yeah, I was like, "Well, what if any of it was really important?" He's like, "Well, if it's that important, they'll email me back about it, and the
They will
rest of it's
find
just
you.
noise." Like, that's so funny, and I thought that was such an aggressive approach, and I don't think I could do that just for the fact that I'm super neurotic. I mean, there's a lot of emails, right off the bat, you don't need to read, and you can auto delete and filter really, really quickly and then hone in on the ones you need. I mean, I don't by any means go through 400 emails and go like line by line. It doesn't take me days to get through my emails when I come back to work. It should really only take me an hour or so to go through a couple of emails, 100 emails. I flag the ones that are for follow up, delete what's unnecessary at that point. Hope I got the high level, information that
Yeah.
I needed. And then I go and have some discussions if I need to.
Ain't
But
that
I
the
mean,
truth though? That, like, people will find you and track you down
oh
when they
God, yeah.
need you. I mean, you don't wanna make a bad rep for yourself that, like, you come back vacation and, like, all these like, really important ones just aren't happening because 'cause you're an asshole. Like, don't do that.
Well, I
But
would
I
never
think that
delete anything
there's
from my boss or
yeah.
like, you know what I mean? Like, oh, delete, like they'll come and find me. No, it's obviously not your boss's job to come and try and find you multiple times because you're not
Yeah.
answering. There's some caveats to that deleting
Yeah. Well, and
strategy.
there's caveats to, like, the bot that we wrote that cleared out calendars, and we learned a lot because we messed up a few times along the way. The first time we did it, it deleted all, like, external meetings, and so, like, our whole sales team and stuff had to, like, re-go through or all of our recruitment actually when we were doing interviews with people, like, we wiped them all, so we had to do, like, run the script to then, like, pull them back. So, like, lots of learnings, but what I will
That's
say
funny.
is a few things. One, it encourages people to be comfortable with the unknown. And so we used to purposely want to do it because we wanted people to be resourceful, to check their assumptions, to really consider what's valuable, what's not, and like just live through change, which I think a lot of companies and a lot of people actually just suck at. And so this is why I bring it back to trimming the fat. I think it's so important. I think when you're, making some decisions that are going to make your company and your team, however you want to think about it, run better, like you do need to fundamentally stop and reconsider all the facts and what will
Absolutely.
be better. And I think humans, well, I know humans are terrible at that. Like humans naturally make decisions. Well, the majority, unless you're a sociopath, then you do not have that empathy or gauge, but make decisions based on emotions. They base it on risk, on anger, on fear, on pleasure. And decision making needs to be based with the context of emotions, but based on facts. And so when you can make, I guess, system wide changes to trim the fat or however you want to think about it, it has to be fact based. It has to
Mhm.
be like built into that and has to, I think, brush up against some of the biases that we naturally have.
So, I mean, like what you're saying really is like you're having a review of everything and you can't be afraid to cut. Like whatever is not yielding those results or not having a high enough impact, like depending on what your bar is, you have
Yeah.
to be willing to cut. And like you say, it's not an emotional,
Well, I mean,
it's not
yeah,
an
you gotta aspire. And, like, just very specifically, like, let's go down the track of, okay, trimming the fat means there's someone on your team that isn't performing. And we won't go too deep, but just, like, really quickly. Like, you hire someone, you bring them on, you train them. You have put so much of your time and effort into it. It's like the sunk cost fallacy right off the bat. You don't wanna give up all of that time. So you naturally then have, like, a halo around them being like, "No, they're better than what they are." Next thing is you like the person. So emotional comes in of like, well, I don't want to hurt this person's feeling. I don't want to like I'm going to ruin their life. Well, if you can see by all this, it's behavioral economics, it's biases that are coming in, it's
Mhm.
emotions that are coming in. When if you can stop and say, okay, there's all that, check. It's not like forget it because they're there, acknowledge it. But then it's what are the facts? Well, I need to have a high performing team. We talked about A players wanting to work with A players.
Yep.
So, are we doing that? No, because we have someone that's not performing. Have I had a conversation with them? Yes. Have they changed? No. Like maybe now is the time to push the red button, say goodbye, and have them go on their way because they're going to be better off. And you and your team and your company is going to be better off. But that factual representation to make that decision, like, I don't want to underestimate it. It's really fucking hard.
Oh,
And we got to
a
do it better.
absolutely, and just, like, quickly on that note too, and we may have already discussed this before, Have you done everything you can to help uplift this person, to help them develop? Like we've talked about making mistakes. Making mistakes are totally fine, and but
Yeah,
hopefully you're making new mistakes. You're not making the same mistakes over and over again. So at some point after having conversations with people, whether it's, your employees or whether it's a project team you're thinking about, where does it stop? Like, at what point do we stop with the let's keep doing this over and over? You're not performing. You do have to remove your emotion. You have to respond to everything with empathy and, as a real human being and being sensitive to those types of things. But it cannot get in the way of how your organization is operating and attempting to operate at its highest impact, essentially,
yeah. I
because
think
that is truly trimming the fat.
Yeah, I think a good heuristic to use is when making decisions or really like thinking, the important is like you're one to many, not one to one. So, for example, I used to, as someone who really cares about other humans, and I would go down that track of over helping. And so I think
Mm,
over the years, I've realized like strong opinion, people try and help and save people way too much. They need to make
yeah.
decisions to let people go way earlier than they ever do.
I
But that being said, one thing heuristic, I would say, I got to stop thinking about, Bill, Brittany, Jane, whoever it is, and saving them and making their career good. I need to think about Shopify. I need to
I
think about the talent
100%.
team. And like that heuristic pulls you out to the greater cause and good and the facts that go with it versus the one to one. But I agree, like you shouldn't give up on someone before you've tried and supported. And people fail, and it's how they respond from the failure that matters. But in regards to, yeah, getting people out of the company when it doesn't make sense, I think it's
Like, I completely agree. I think for me, this is a lesson I've learned the most over the last 8 to 10 months, is that it's not about separately those individuals and saving their careers and making everything great for them. It's about making your organization great. I sound very Donald Trumpy right now, but I'm not trying to be making America great. But it is about maximizing for your organization and where the organization needs those folks to be. And if they
yeah,
can't be there after they've been given the supports and they've been given the guidance and the teachings and everything you possibly could have done to help uplift them, then they shouldn't be employed there anymore,
yeah,
unfortunately, because they're not a contributing member. They are that fatty piece of gristle on the side of your delicious steak that you don't
people are
want
gonna
to
love
chew
this.
on, frankly,
Yeah,
if we're going to analogies.
it's a great analogy. It gives me a really good visual, just sharp.
I,
But what I was gonna say is this is that okay, like going back to the how we started, the company, like the best companies in the world are the ones that make the hardest decisions.
mhm.
And I think a lot of times, especially in the past 10 years, like the power dynamics of company versus employees, it was heavier on the employee side because supply and demand. There was more demand for certain talent than there was supply. And so like naturally the power shifts there. You have more control. But I think one of the things that happened because of that is that people started to think that the priority of the company or the priority of the HR team is to make employees happy and make them great. And that is not the priority of the company. The priority of the company is to be a strong company, to serve your merchants, to have a solid product. Like it's all of those things. You do that by having the environment and people in which you can do that. So I think that's the core of it. But you can't get the outcome mixed up with, you can't get the cause and effect mixed up, if you will. And like actually super interesting fact. I remember I read this like 2 years ago, but there was tons of articles and there probably still is. Maybe I'll search for one, but it's like 1 in 4 CEOs of successful companies are sociopaths. And it makes so much sense
Well, I
because I
guess
think
I've got a good career then ahead of me. No, I'm just kidding.
don't say that. Maybe a little bit.
Joking.
But it makes sense because they're making the hardest decisions in all aspects of trimming the fat or whatnot without emotions. They are making it
Mm.
factual. They generally are more charismatic, more
Are we
attracted
talking
to
about
roles
an
of
Elon
power.
Musk here or what?
I mean, we're talking about many, 1 in 4, let's be honest. Um,
Seriously.
yeah, like I
Oh
just
my
find it
gosh.
so interesting because then I think it gets to the crust of like when you're building something and you want it to be successful, you have to figure out it's kind of like when they say it's not what you say, it's how you say it. it's like, sure, but it's actually both. It is what you say. It's what you
Yeah.
decide, and it's how you decide and
How you
how you
say it.
show it.
100%. I want to circle back a quick second to trimming the fat because we've covered a couple of different areas where you can trim and that most people would traditionally think of, right? So
Yeah,
automation, AI, trimming teams, et cetera, et cetera. Virtual work, infrastructure, production lines. What about conservation? Like, what about sustainability? Like, even it cracks me up because I walked into your house, like I'm in Brittany's house right now, everyone, and you're away, obviously. So I come in, it's
no, don't
beautiful and
call me
warm.
out. You're gonna blast me that I have the heat on when we're
Yeah.
away? It's winter,
Ah,
it's Ottawa.
yeah, I know, but, like, some people, when they go away, they'll set their thermostat, like, not down to the, super duper low, but they'll set it down a little bit lower than normal. I walk in, I'm like, "Wow, this is cozy." I'm like, "I probably need to take my sweater off," you know? Just saying, just a little point to give to people. Same thing with office buildings, lights, same thing with saving on, like, does everything need to be on all the time? Like, if you're conserving on energy, obviously that's helping on many different fronts. You're also saving money, right? You're saving on your footprint as well, just like what you said with the
Yeah,
travel costs. That can maximize your profitability. You're saving that money. I think that's another area where people don't necessarily think of, on top of all the other benefits to the
yeah,
world, and reuse, reduce, recycle, things of that nature. Having companies where you have recycling programs in place that can reduce the use on raw natural resources and things of that nature. Like, there's just those little areas. And I mean, obviously I'm no expert in recycling. I only started using my little green bin like 2 years ago because it was a New Year's resolution. But you know, it's an element
we
though.
try. Also, okay, to get me out
Oh,
of
here
the
she
shit
goes.
corner here, Scott was there last week, and he's back this weekend, so it's only a week. We're there a lot,
I'm just
but
joshing with
no,
you.
no, no, it's inaccurate. I mean, it does come down to money spent ultimately and how you find the value of it, right? Like whether it's your personal life or profession, which we've said on multiple episodes, like they are very overlapping, right? Like how you make decisions in all areas. I think that in the business, it's a little less, you know, human first because I think in your
Mhm.
personal life, like the relationships, your village is everything. Whereas
Yeah.
in a business, it really your everything is the money. Like you have to have money to pay your
Yeah, of
people and to
course.
grow. But I think ultimately, yeah, it overlaps. Yeah, it's really interesting too, just the different streams. So we have financial, we have sustainability, we have humans. Does that cover kind of all the fat? And by the
Well,
way, I hate saying like fat when we say that, but you know what I mean.
I know what you mean. So what I'll think about a little bit for the government is like processes and planning. I find it really hilarious. So, like, I'm obviously in various teams, and say we have cyclical requests that come through. I mean, like the end of the year is coming. You're dealing with budgets, or you're cleaning up resources, things of that nature, or you're planning corporate documents to demonstrate what your organization has done all year and what you're going to do the next year. For some reason, it like cracks me up. Like, this comes as a surprise to everyone, like as if we've not done it every year for a million years, like as if it's new. And I'm like, how is this like a surprise to anyone? The dates, like there's like a
Yeah.
calendar for how things go. This is going to come out. Instead of pretending as if we're reinventing the wheel every single time, like, oh, we need to put this together. Well, let's use what we did last year and then let's kind of make some adjustments, or let's plan in advance. Let's strategically get things ready. I'm a real like stickler for efficiencies, right? And like, you don't have to restart everything. And I mean, I've had some experiences recently in like asking for certain presentations to be created. And I'm like, this is not new. We have all of this material. We've done this before in just a slightly different audience. Go and take that, add in what I've asked you to do, and bing, bang, boom. Like, we're good to go. Like, it shouldn't be
Yeah.
new and surprising. Strategically plan. You're cutting people's time that they're wasting doing things over when we've done them a
Yeah.
million
I
times. Do a
mean,
bit of
to me, though,
research.
that's like an artistry of knowing when to rinse and repeat and knowing when to start from scratch.
I love
Like,
that.
I
Rinse and
think that's
repeat.
the hardest thing is and it comes with experience and knowledge and skill, but I think that, like, when I think about the most junior to your role, they get it mixed up because creativity sometimes comes from completely scrapping something and building anew. Whereas I think to your point, efficiency can be like a good word or a bad word, depending. Some people have really strong reactions to it because efficiency can actually just mean like redundant, no extra, really boring, too structured. Like it can have some negative connotations if done wrong. If done right, which I think you've experienced a lot, it makes things going faster, makes you prioritize your time. And I actually think this is probably a strength of yours from your personal life. Like being a successful working mom, you have to build everything in your life to be efficient, or else you won't get by. And so, like,
Mhm.
I see you up close. I know that you have a plan. I know that you know exactly where to repeat dinners, where to do certain things. And I know you also know when to be like, this ain't working. We need to
Mhm.
start anew and we need to think outside the box. And I think that's what makes good from mediocre is knowing when to go
It's
down those two
it's
paths.
that review, right? And I think that's a really, really great point is that it's like it's not it's exactly what Britt just said. It's not always about regurging what you've done before. Sometimes there's a place for that. Oftentimes in the government, there is a place for that. But there are also opportunities to relook
Totally.
at those processes and go, that's not
Well, and
even
I think,
efficient in its own sense.
yeah,
Scrap that.
trimming the
That's
fat
crap.
means stop thinking you have to create everything new. Like, I think that
Exactly.
is a wasted time. Like, I fully agree. It's knowing the difference.
It's wasted time, it's stress on people, and it's just cutting into your impact or depending on, the organization, your profitability. So I think that
Yeah.
they're all important things that need to be considered when we talk about trimming the fat.
Yeah. But it's
I mean,
nuanced.
in the government, for example, our reliance on paper was, like, shocking. Signed documents and things of that nature. When the pandemic came, and I think we were just about getting ready to transition into kind of electronic signatures, but obviously it was more forceful when the pandemic came. I was like, "Oh my god!" Like people were still trying to print stuff out, like at their house, and like you
Yeah.
can't do that
That's
with
crazy.
most documents at your house unless you have a secure network or wanting to go in the office to print things off. I was like, "There's got to be a better way, right?" Like
DocuSign.
paper files. Like, we've
DocuSign.
got yeah, DocuSign, I know, DocuSign, and now we've got, various protective signatures through Adobe and, like, Foxit,
Yeah.
like, all these other types of amazing, softwares and whatnot. Like, paper filing cabinets, I can't tell you how many
Yeah.
cabinets, obviously, in the government we have in the office, and you're like, "Is anyone ever gonna go in those ever?" Like, you
Yeah,
know what I
no,
mean? Like,
never.
it's
We
so
stopped doing that in,
inefficient.
like, 2012. I was like, "Fuck that. We're not going in. Everything's going online. We're all getting it in a shared drive." But I think that, like, that is the perfect example of I think if you're running a company well, running a team well, you need to automate and build efficiencies while questioning everything you do that is redundant. Like, as in, like, there's a really good book, Thinking Fast and Slow. The premise of it is you have two ways of thinking. One is like the first thought that comes that's automated in your brain because you've done it a million times. It's the fact that I plug in a speaker and I know to talk into it and I don't have to think through the steps. It just happens. Thinking two is when it's something new, it's novel. You have to think through it, you have to make judgments, and you have to iterate on it. I think that too many times we store things into that thinking one pattern and forget to check it and say, like, okay, is there a new way of doing this? Does it even make sense? That was the bot for the calendar. It all got
Mhm.
put into this thinking one category that it was so habitual that you need to shake it up, have a little chaos bot and say, like, let's rethink this. I think that you should always be rethinking process, structure, redundancies, while also always saying, how do we make things more efficient, more effective, better
Yeah.
use of our time? I think that's a great thing. And
I
with
mean,
that,
yeah,
oh,
I
go
was
ahead.
just gonna say, like, that's such a great note to end on. And I was just gonna say, I was doing a little bit of research the other day on this, and I came across a little quote. I like to have my little quotes and stuff like that. And it said, "The enemy of efficiency is distraction, and distraction reduces your ability to be efficient." So, ignoring inefficiencies and just kind of going along your merry way and you don't notice that things just
Yeah,
build up. And this is where we get to the whole trimming of the fat. You kind of keep chubbing along, chubbing. You keep
I know, I
chugging
was like,
along
is it
doing what. Yeah, I didn't mean that. Keep chugging along doing just what you're doing, and you forget to look at everything holistically and see, are there inefficiencies building up? Is there an area to trim down here? Are there areas where we can have higher impact? And don't be afraid to do it. And like you said, we not your mommy. You know what I mean? We got to be able to like take the inefficient, we got to take the emotions somewhat out of it, right? I'm not your
you just
mom.
have to add the facts and have your lean on those.
Heavier lean. I love it.
Awesome, let's get some wine.
Wine time. Super.
Okay,
Hello.
you got a good wine?
That's a pretty intense hello. We're back, and we're back with wine time. Britt, will you be partaking in this wine time
Not in
today?
this one. As I mentioned last episode, I'm freezing those little egg babies, putting them out, and so I'm still not drinking, but hopefully by next week I'll be partaking with you.
We're sending Britt loads of solid egg vibes. Okay,
Right?
like giving her all the vibes for all the eggs, dozens of eggs. So today we're going to be drinking this lovely rosé.
Yum, I'm jealous.
Okay, it's a Miraval Côte de Provence. Okay, how do you like my French? Fun fact on this one, this is the vineyard from the south of France that was previously, well, I guess still owned by Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt. And this is
Mm.
the vineyard that they're like fighting over right now in their nasty little separation and whatnot. But yeah, I'm going to just go ahead and quickly pour myself a glass. Maybe, Britt, you want to fill the time with what you've been up to for the last 5 seconds.
Yeah, I will. I mean, things are good. I'm feeling actually great. I highly recommend to any women out there who want to freeze some eggs to do it. I think the process is great. A little lengthy, but otherwise, I'm feeling good. And life is good too. I'm out in Arizona still, looking out at the mountains, which is beautiful and peaceful, and feeling great. Oh, look at you. You have your wine ready to go. Okay, give me the rating.
I
Give me
have
all the
it.
goods. I like
Let
this
me
one.
let me just give it a little sniff, like,
Okay. Oh, do the proper. Give it a
a
little
little cheers,
swirl.
little cheers to you. Cheers. Oh, just a bit of Fiji, of course.
I know, and now I'm like, she's gonna chirp me on the sustainability again because it's a water bottle, plastic.
I'm
I
not
do
a
recycle
diehard.
them.
I'm not a diehard, but I just had to. Okay, so it's a lovely wine. I think this would be the first time I've actually had this one. You can get it at the LCBO. Decent price point. I think you bought this one with me, Brittany. Do you recall how much this costs?
I feel like it's low 20s, like
Low 20s.
20, maybe high 20. It's in the 20s. It's either 24 or 29 Canadian.
It's not too sweet, which is
Yeah, it's nice
fantastic.
and dry.
It's funny actually, the bottle looks like, it doesn't look like your traditional wine bottle, which I kinda like about it. It looks like it's a bottle of, like, whiskey or like a bottle of Baileys. It's shaped like that, which I think is kinda cool, so it's a little bit different. A nice bit of fruity, zesty taste to it, but not overly sweet, which is
The
lovely. I
perfect
think
patio chiller.
the perfect patio chiller definitely needs to be chilled. I would not recommend drinking this when it's warm. I have it chilled to a superb, let's go with 4 degrees.
No idea if that's right.
Well, I know that it's so funny enough because we just had a new fridge put into our house. The
Oh, really?
fridge
That's
needs
annoying, eh?
yeah,
Fucking
annoying but great because it's massive and it's so
oh,
much better
that's
than my
good.
old fridge. But the fridge needs to be set at 0, and then, like, the freezer is at, like, minus, like, 18 or something, and I believe wines, like white wines and rosés, you don't want them that cold, so I think my wine fridge is set at about 4 degrees. It might be in Fahrenheit, so I can't, transcribe it well
So
enough
this
into
is really
Celsius.
no value whatsoever to the
I know,
listeners.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to be really, like, connoisseur but, it's not coming off, but anyways, I tried.
Just
It's
teasing.
good, tastes good.
Yeah, what's your rating? 1 to 10?
I give it an 8.5. I
Oh,
think it's
that's
quite
a good
nice,
one.
actually.
Yeah, I like
And
it. I
because
like
it's
it.
kinda got a little bit of celebrity status, I feel like, you
Mm.
know,
It's like a
pretty
little
cool right
sparkle.
now. Yeah, I feel kinda cool.
So
What
how's
was I gonna
life?
say? Oh, life is good. Actually, I was gonna say we were in Cuba last week,
Oh,
the fam
yeah.
and I. My parents were there too. We had a really nice time. Beaches are phenomenal. The food was good. It
Yeah.
was leagues above when we went my husband and I went to Cuba, like, 5 years ago, which was a shoddy disaster. Might not have been Cuba's fault, it might just been because I had the flu, so everything was bad for me. But actually, it was quite good this time around. Food was okay. I'm not gonna complain. Food's not been what we've been to at other resorts when we've all
Yeah,
traveled
we've had some
together
good
where we've
ones.
been, like, super top notch, but it was good, and we just had a great time as a family. The kids were, like, just loving it, all being together and enjoying all, like, the festivities and, the vibes
Okay,
around
so real
resorts.
question though, real
Yeah.
question. Taking your kids on a family vacation, is it really a vacation? Like, did you feel like you relaxed, or is it just parenting in another country?
To be honest, like, it felt pretty simple. Like, the kids are
Oh,
laid
that's
back, like, the kids are
they're
9
good ages.
and 6, so
Yeah,
super laid back, easy peasy travel. It really helped that my parents were there. Honestly, we got downtime. My parents, even just having a few extra people to help entertain the kids,
yeah,
even if it's just a little bit of time here and there sitting by the pool. It was
totally.
massively helpful. It gave us all, like, a little bit of extra company, to kind of split off on our own here and there. I have no issues. So if Gary and I had gone maybe by ourselves with just the kids, we probably would have had some stress because it's just us, they're relying on just us to entertain them. Whereas with my parents there, we were, like I said, able to go to some dinners on our own, sneak off
And
a
what
little bit here
grandparents
and
aren't
there.
gonna spoil, you know? They probably the
Oh,
kids love
they
that. Get a little
I think
spoiled, get a little treats.
they really enjoyed it. I think everyone really enjoyed it and saw the real benefit, and we're already talking about, "Oh, we should do something like this next year," like, with my sister and her kids and stuff too, so that
Oh,
everyone
that's
can be
awesome.
together, but we had a great time. Travel home was crap,
Yeah.
but
I feel like flying right now
whatever.
sucks all around. I was on a flight the other day, we were delayed by 4 hours, and it was like a quick little hop over flight, and I was like, "This shouldn't be happening." But even when I came back from Hawaii, like, my whole family, so there's 22 of us, everyone got delayed. My poor grandma and my aunt and uncle got delayed, like, 2 days. Like, they slept at the airport. I was like,
Oh my
"That
god.
sucks." I
Yeah,
know, Grandma Faye, like,
that's so brutal, and
they were
it's
troopers.
happening a lot. We were flying Sunwing, like, not to name names, but we had a 14-hour
But
delay.
naming a name.
Yeah. We had a 14-hour delay, and we're lucky we were at the
Oh,
resort coming home. But of course, they're gonna flag it off like it's a technical issue when in reality, the pilot told us, like, "Oh, we couldn't get the crew and everything." So then, like, you don't get your compensation, which you should for anything over 4 hours. We got compensated for our flight out, funny enough, which was, 3.5, 4 hours delayed. But the flight home, the 14-hour delay that we experienced, we were like, you have a bill of rights as a traveler, not compensated because 'cause they're like, "It was a technical issue." I'm like, "Well, on the plane, the pilot straight up told everyone it's because you didn't have the crew." So that's really
yeah.
annoying.
You should have recorded it.
You know what? I've That's happened to me before on flights when we travel home from places. They always find the way to make it so it's
Yeah.
as if it's not their fault, it's
You chill.
completely out of their
Trimming the
control.
fat
Trimming the fat. Well, I'm pretty
in
sure
the
Sunwing's
wrong
getting
way.
the fat trimmed really soon. They're either going bankrupt or they're getting bought out by WestJet, so it's to be
Uh,
known what will happen.
I actually meant more so like they lied. That was their version of trimming the fat, just lying.
Oh, they were
Text them,
trimming the fat.
"Let's
I'm just
Susuto."
straight up
Okay.
saying their company should be trimmed. I don't know at this point. It probably will be. They're having
Hot
massive
take.
issues.
That's good. Well, I'm
Yeah.
happy you're home, and I'm happy it was good. It sounds like a great trip. It's always nice to just get in the sun, especially when you're in, Ontario in the deep snow. Like, there's still so much snow there, and I just feel like the grayness, like, you savor those moments, those winter vacations, that's for sure.
Well, we're seeing a lot of improvements in the weather, but like this morning, random like 20-minute blizzard. Like, why? Why is it snowing right now? And
Yeah.
like actually cracked up yesterday because we had the kids all day and I had them have friends over and that. And it was a lovely day. It was like 3 or 4 degrees and the sun at some point was out in the afternoon. I said, "Oh, let's all walk down, to the corner store and get some slushies." and it starts blizzarding as we're walking back. Nobody's got hats on, gloves on, except
Everyone's
me
holding
because
a
I'm
cold drink.
yeah, holding freezing drinks. I had to hold everyone's drinks. They're all shivering and frozen. I'm like, I mean, I didn't know the weather was gonna turn. What the hell kind of weather is this? Like, Mother Nature is truly fucking with us in this month of March. Like, I'm not even kidding. I just want it to be done.
I agree. I agree. Soon it will be nice. We'll just
Soon it will
all the
be
sun will
nice.
come out. Let's hope.
So let's hope for the sun. I mean, I'm gonna polish off this glass of wine. You're gonna drink your Fiji,
Yeah.
and we
Boo.
shall meet again, I guess.
We will. Okay, well, thanks for listening. See you all
Thanks,
soon.
everyone. Bye. Take care.